Good afternoon, everybody. It is currently 12:30 Mountain Time, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday, the 18th of February. We're on Mod 2 of 2019. This is DES 109 Graphic Design 1, and I am your instructor, Melissa Kinney. I first just want to apologize if you hear any nonsense going on behind me. We have some people doing some work to our heating system. Since it's the winter time, we want to make sure that we are good with that. So there's might be some nonsense going on in the background, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me and not them. So we're going to go over a little bit the course and what's kind of expected and some tips on how to be successful in the class and kind of how I run things. So we're just going to kind of do a brief overview today of the course itself and of week 1, and then all the other Mondays after this we'll actually be doing critiques and some review of the previous week. So let us jump right in. So like I said, my name is Melissa Kinney, and I'm going to do an introduction of myself. I think it's on the next slide. We'll do an introduction to the course. We'll talk a little bit about the syllabus and grading. I'm not sure how many of you have taken courses before this, but we'll do a little overview of Canvas and some tips on how to be successful in the class. Week 1, we'll briefly go over and I will explain this week's assignment. Tomorrow we'll do a little bit of a demo, and then we'll talk a little bit about graphic design. So again, third time, my name is Melissa Kinney. I've worked as a graphic designer for almost 15 years. I actually was a fine arts undergrad student, and we only had about 4 graphic design courses at the time, and I took all of them. Excuse me, but once I got into the field, I realized that that was actually the place to be. So I started working as a graphic designer. Currently, I'm working towards my master's degree in IT, and I'm working as working on my concentration, which is web design and development. And my favorite activities are volleyball and dyeing my hair different colors. This week it's just orange. That's a little bit of an older picture. I think I did that in Halloween time. So you can reach me a number of different ways. You can telephone me or text at the number that's on the screen right now. You can also email me at my email, or you can message me through Canvas. I have a number of different ways of checking all of these different messages, and I do try to make sure that I check them at least once a day to make sure that you guys are getting your responses in a timely manner. So just make sure that you are aware of the fact that I am on the East Coast, so there is a little bit of a time difference probably from most of you. Although I have had students on the East Coast, I've had some in Mountain Time, Pacific Time, Central Time, so we're kind of all over the place in the country, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So we actually have a discussion, and it actually looks like we might have someone coming in. Let me just pause this real quick. Where is my
cancel?
Okay. Let's see. It does sound like we have someone that just came in. I'm just trying to actually locate my checkbox real quick so that I can, there we go. It looks like we have Beth here today. How are you, Beth? Oh, and actually it looks like we had someone else come in too as well. There we go. Good, I'm doing pretty good. We only just got started here. I just only introduced myself, so I won't bore you on that. You can watch that, excuse me, if you wanted to learn a little bit about me a little bit later. You can go back and watch the recording. And looks like we have a Dobby here as well. So how are you today? Excuse me. So we just, like I mentioned, we just got started. I only just introduced myself, so I'm just going to keep on going here, and you folks let me know. I'll stop a couple of times and make sure that if you have any questions, we stop Excuse me. And fighting a headache. Yeah, you know what? I swear to God, it's got to do with the air pressure right now because I've been fighting one as well. Excuse me. So let's move ahead then. We won't delay here. We'll kind of move right through and just kind of make sure that we finish in a timely manner. So to kind of move on, we have a discussion. It is non-graded, but it is an introduce yourself discussion, and it's always really helpful for me, especially, but it's also helpful to your classmates to kind of just get an idea to who I'm working with here and kind of a little bit of information about you guys, because then it, like I said, it kind of gives me some context for who my students are. So if you can just provide your name, where you're located, what your major is if you're actually not in graphics but you're taking these courses, what your career goals are, and then something random, just to kind of give me an idea of the personalities that I've got in my class. I think I have about 30 students, maybe a few less. So that's a lot to remember, but so it's always nice if I can have one or two things about each student that kind of makes them stand out. So we are going to kind of breeze around Canvas in just a minute. We're going to look at the home page and the shortcuts. Make sure to check the announcements pretty often. I try to keep the announcements down to a minimum because I don't like boring everybody and just posting announcements just to post them. I do like to make sure that the announcements either are for the recordings for the live sessions here, or they are providing some kind of helpful information. Sometimes I actually have to communicate that way with you. I didn't have to do it last mod, but I think on one of my very first mods, I ended up having a conflict, or I lost power or something, and I ended up needing to move the multi-session. So that's how I would actually be doing that, because especially since I have Canvas on my phone, so I can still post announcements. I just can't do my sessions that way. So make sure that you check them. We'll go over the course information page and the live sessions page, as well as the course media, so that you guys know where everything is. And let me actually, oh, nope, I don't want to do that. There we go, close out of that real quick. So we'll go over this. I'm working on a different computer than I normally do here today, so if I'm struggling a little bit, that's why. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so live session announcements. Want to make sure. Here we go. Course information. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that I was doing this in order. I usually have two monitors so I can keep the show up on one screen and then my internet on the other, and that's obviously not what I've got going on here today. Excuse me. So this particular course, we talk a little bit about the foundations of graphic design, what the principles and the elements are, and how they work together, and what the or how the design process is at the core of graphic design. We actually also do a little bit of research into art history, design history, and how they, excuse me, how they influence what we do today. And we are going to work on a little bit of kind of extrapolating various principles and elements through existing designs and layouts. And excuse me, goodness, my allergies are just horrible today. And we're going to be ultimately using those to mimic a particular style, and then also working with our own kind of layouts. So I'm not going to go through all of these because that would just be boring as anything for you guys. If you want to read through the individual objectives and everything, you can absolutely do that, on your own time. Excuse me. So we have, like I said, we have all the objectives there. This is an approximation of the amount of time that you might spend in the course. You might find that you spend a little bit more, you might find you spend a little bit less, but this is just kind of a baseline. And this is the breakdown essentially for the syllabi, and what you can expect to be looking at each week. I kind of go over these in the live sessions anyways. So we have, again, this is just, actually, I don't even know why they have this twice, but essentially this is the outline, and then this is just the outline elaborated with more details. So again, you can go right through that if you want. We have some grading information down a little bit further. Excuse me, and that is that. If you go to instructor contact information, which I can show you on the homepage as well, okay, this is me, my phone number, my Skype, my email, my Google Plus, although I've never had anyone contact me that way. If that's the method you use, then absolutely, that's fine. Little bit about me, and but this is where, you know, if you do need to reach me, well, this is where you would find that information. You can also find it on the homepage in About the Instructor. Same thing. If we go back to the homepage and go to the readings and videos, this is where you will find your weekly readings and videos, like I just mentioned. There is one recorded lecture every week that has already been recorded, and that kind of gives you the basic foundation for the subject matter that we're going over on that particular week. So it is imperative that you watch that. They are very clear, very easy to understand, and they are very thorough. So they really go through everything that you're going to need in order to complete your assignments and the things that we touch upon in our live lectures on Mondays and Tuesdays. So this week, we're actually looking at what graphic design is and where it came from, and then how and why design works and the individual aspects of it. We have an article, I think it's 2 articles, oh no, 3 articles right here, talking about the Gestalt principles. So 1, 2, and 3, and then a playlist of lynda.com videos, which are pretty short. They give all of the times right here. This week it's on InDesign. So yeah, you can see that the longest video is like not even quite 10 minutes long, and this is going to help with your InDesign skills, your InDesign knowledge. Next week, I believe, is Illustrator. The week after is Photoshop. And I believe the week following that is actually talking about social media. So the playlists here are really, really beneficial. So that's where you'll actually find your media every week. If you go back to the homepage, and you can actually see it on that nav bar right there too, but right here in the live sessions, obviously we have at least 2 people that were able to read them. This is where the information is for the live sessions, at what time they're going to be. Tomorrow, and I do want to make sure I emphasize this, tomorrow it's actually going to be at 6:30 Mountain Time, which on my time is 8:30. So I do have all the individual times in there, and it's simply because I had a scheduling conflict. I already have something tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So it's the only week that it's going to be like that, and then next week and the following 2 weeks after, it's going to be the exact same time as it is on Mondays, so 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. On Thursdays also is 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. That is my 2-hour multi-session where you can come in and get individual help from me. You, if for some reason you have a question and you can't come in, you want to shoot me a message and I can do a little recording and post that. When we finally actually get into our projects and do some critiques, if I didn't do your critique on a particular day and you would like me to critique it, we can schedule that time there. So those are like my office hours where I have that set to be available, and I also will, be checking in with everybody on those days as well. On this link as well we do have the pre-recorded sessions as well. So this is actually a second place where you can find them, but Under each week, we have where it says here, Lecture 2, the recording of the live session will be placed here after the session ends. This is where I will be placing the recordings of my live session. So once today's session is done, I will be uploading the link right in here, and I usually highlight it in yellow for that particular week too, so it's easy to scroll down and find it. And then when the new week starts, I remove the highlight and I highlight the next week. So you will actually find, because I am going to do two 1-hour sessions, the Monday and the Tuesday, you'll see Lecture 2 and Lecture 3. So you'll, again, that's just an easy way to find it. And I think, I'm just trying to think of that was, oh, the announcements, that was the other thing. Okay, so now we have so far, these are the only announcements that we have that have been posted so far. Right here, these are just the applications that you need for this course. Most of you probably already have them, but if you don't, or if you are having issues, let me know. I do know someone had to change computers last mod, and she was actually having problems like switching her license over, and I was able to direct her to the right person. So this is the multi-session schedule, because I am not the only one that does multi-sessions. This is for all the 100 level classes. And if you can't come to my multi-session, you can go to any of these and ask your questions. You know, once it comes up, you can take a look at the schedule. There we go. So we have, you know, here's my name right here with my link and my time slot. But again, like I mentioned, these are the other instructors and their Zoom rooms, what they're teaching, but a lot of them, they would be most likely be able to answer your questions anyways, because just of the fact that we're all artists, or all graphic designers. So you should be able to get feedback on a project, or maybe you're just having a little bit of a problem with your software. You know, we can absolutely walk things like that through. And I just got an email about an hour ago from our class coach, Rachel Fields. So I will be putting up her information, her schedule every week in the announcements as well. Excuse me. And then, because I know everyone has issues at one time or another with the internet going down on them, this is just a brief video on how to actually download the YouTube videos while you have internet connectivity, so that if you do notice that you are having issues, you can make sure you do it before you completely lose it. Or if you know that yours is just not, it's just unreliable, you can do it ahead of time, and then you'll have it on your computer and you can watch them at your leisure. So there we go. And I think that was it for, oh, thank you, Beth. We have Beth says that she's from Ohio. She's working in graphic arts and she has experience in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. Not sure, you're still exploring. All open ideas, wonderful. And you're a country girl with horses. I live right next to a horse farm. I'm in a very, very small town, Beth. Very small farm town. So I hear you on that one. Lots of wildlife where I live. And thank you very much for the comment on my kids. That's actually an old picture too. I think that's probably about a year old. Okay, so live sessions, course media, course information. Good, we have covered all those. Actually, let me get that. So we, okay, are going to go over the course here. Okay, so for week 1, we are talking a little bit about what design is, and our discussion is talking about design trends and design history. We are talking kind of like, about where we come from. There we go. Kind of stumbling over my tongue a little bit there. And kind of talking about different styles and, you know, how kind of people kind of pull things together. The design history, the second thing on that bullet list, is actually our assignment for this week, where you folks will be designing some flashcards based on certain design errors. There will be a list of time periods that you will take a look at and pick 3. Do a little bit of research on that particular era and what stylistic elements are specific to that era. And then you will have a quiz on design principles and Gestalt theory, which I believe is also actually, it's based on the readings and possibly a video that is included in that. I'm sorry, I'm actually just share this bar. Come on. I just remembered something that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned in the assignments. So I don't want to forget that. I'm going to kind of split my attention here real quick, because I did want to make sure that I pointed out the daily checkpoints. That was not on my list there, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned them. So these daily checkpoints, for those of you that either might not remember, or maybe this is your first course, they are just very brief, kind of like mini quizzes almost. Most of them have a brief video that are under 5 minutes long and has just a couple of questions on the information in the quiz. You are required to have a certain number of these daily checkpoints completed and passed, and anything after that is extra credit. And since it only takes a couple of minutes, I highly suggest you making sure you get in there. These are only open for the one day and then they close, so you can't go back and complete them. But it's such an easy way to, make sure that you boost your score there. When that's really the reason why I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it, because once you get to that minimum that you have to be at, anything else after that is extra credit, which obviously can help. So anyways, little bit of a sidebar, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. So like I mentioned, we have the design history flashcards, the design principles and Gestalt theory quiz. That will be your assessment. For next week, week 2, we're talking about where did we come from. So it's kind of like a continuation from this week's discussion and flashcards. Excuse me, where we're incorporating a little bit more of history. And next week, we'll actually talk about the elements of design in addition to the principles of design. The principles of design are going to be discussed in the pre-recorded lecture from Lisa Hammersheim. So make sure that you get that, or you make sure you watch that. And so next week, we talk a little bit about how the elements and the principles actually work together and create those wonderful compositions that you might see on billboards and magazines and everything else. We have an advertising makeover where you are going to take some text copy and you'll be laying it out in one of the 3 styles that you are choosing for the flashcards this week. So you'll be, once you determine those 3 different eras and you kind of figure out what their stylistic characteristics are, then you'll choose one of those and you'll actually create a banner or a poster with provided text, and you'll do it in that style that you research. So, and then the assessment is actually a short paper on where you're doing a little bit of a critique on your work for that advertising makeover, and you're kind of explaining your design process, which is very, very common in the professional world where you have to explain why you did what you did. Week 3, we'll be talking about finding creativity and inspiration, which is very, very common trying to figure that out. As in the industry, it's very easy to get burned out. And we'll kind of discuss different ways we can do that. We will be learning from the past. Part 1 will be creating a poster based on a style of art that you can also, it's going to be a kind of a similar thing where you're going to have a number of artists and you'll research their style and you'll be using provided text to advertise an art exhibit. And then we'll, for the assessment, be working on designing some social media banner ads in Photoshop. And then in week 4, which is probably my favorite, We'll be talking about developing your online design presence and creating an online portfolio. So the discussion is about how your design presence, your online design presence is important and why. And then the portfolio, we will be actually creating in week 4 as your assignment. And your assessment will actually be learning from the past part 2. So you're going to be taking the poster from week 3 and making revisions to it. And that will be your assessment for week 4. Okay, so we have 4 hours total of lectures every week. The pre-recorded session, which I mentioned, there's only one each week. It's 2 hours long, but it is pre-recorded. So you can absolutely break it up if you need to. Watch a half an hour here, 45 minutes here, whatever you got to do. But do make sure that you watch that before you start the assignments, because that's kind of your meat and potatoes. The lectures are going to be your bread and butter. All the demo the next day is kind of like adding the parsley, I suppose, because it's going to be actually we're going to be doing demonstrations of the assignments so that you guys will know exactly what to do step by step. And if you need to, make sure you take notes, because that can be very helpful to refer back to. So then in each week, Mondays, we will be doing a weekly overview, kind of like what I just did in the last slide. And we will be doing some critiques. And if for some reason you do not want your projects critiqued in the sessions, just shoot me an email and let me know. I do not use names. I rename all the files before I even pull them up so that it's all anonymous. But if you are still uncomfortable with that, there is a reminder that goes out beforehand on the announcements page, and you can just shoot me a message. On Tuesdays, like I said, we go over the details of the assignments, and I do a demonstration step by step. So you shouldn't have any questions by the time you do the assignment if you watch the lecture. Some additional resources are in addition to the lynda.com playlist and the readings, we have there's a demonstration accessing the lynda.com playlists. There's the Adobe help page, which can be very helpful. Definitely come in for the multi-session if you need an additional demonstration or just to kind of go back and forth. And you can also, again, utilize the other instructors' multi-sessions. Take a look at that schedule that we found in the announcements. And then the class, oops, excuse me, I accidentally clicked that. The class coach, Rachel Fields, I will put up her schedule right around the same time that I'll be uploading this, because like I said, I just got her schedule about an hour ago. And the Student Success Center as well, they can help with your grammar and spelling for the portions that are written. There should be some people in there that can actually help with critiques as well. Excuse me. So these are some great resources that you have available to you. On, actually, let me just stop real briefly. Beth and Dobby, do you have any questions so far? Excuse me. Okay. And Dobby, am I actually pronouncing your name correctly? I want to make sure that I do that. Nothing seems pretty straightforward. No questions there from Beth. Okay. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. It's very difficult when you're not in class with people. Sometimes I just want to make sure that I'm pronouncing everyone's name correctly. So for the discussions, we have Wednesdays is when your first post is due, 11:59 p.m. It's easier than your full name. All right, I will take your word for it. So the discussions, they are complete at 11:59 p.m. is when your first post is due, and then the other posts, follow-up posts, at least 2 of them are due Saturday at 11:59 p.m., both Mountain Time. One post, typically your first post, must be substantive, which means you need to have at least 1 citation, and you need to have at least 150 words. And please, 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 Don't just say I agree or good post. We want to try to make sure that we have some decent discussions and we add some information. We maybe share our personal experience, ask some questions, because people discussing things with other people, collaborating with other designers, that's the way that we learn all these things. So the more that you provide in the discussions, the more that everyone's going to get out of them, including yourself. Oops. My goodness gracious, it's going backwards on me. There we go. I don't know why it was doing that. So we also want to make sure, one of the reasons why we want to make sure that we have those citations is because we need to make sure we're staying away from plagiarism. Post your opinion, post your experiences, but make sure you're backing it up with some research so that we know where you're getting that information. Summarize everything in your own words. But if you are actually quoting something word for word, it is absolutely imperative that you must add quotation marks and a citation, in-text citation. Also reference their images as well so that we know where they're coming from, especially if someone happens to see something and they're really interested in it, then they know where you were looking and they can do a little bit more research themselves. Okay, so for the assignments now, those are due 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time of that week as well. And again, I do the demonstrations and even go over some additional details. Sometimes in the live session, I have noticed in previous mods, there are certain areas of the instructions that are confusing. So I try to clarify on those, or I give a little bit of extra information, maybe a font resource, or maybe it's a little tip like a keystroke or something. And so watching those demonstrations gives you the extra information that aren't provided in the instructions. So, and because we are designers and the way that we improve is by feedback and critiques, I not only accept revisions and resubmissions, but I encourage them, especially, if maybe you were confused about an assignment and your grade really wasn't that great. I absolutely, as long as you are on time with your original submission, I will absolutely regrade your project if you make revisions for it. I can only do it the one time, but it is absolutely a good practice of your software and of your design skills, and it actually gives you kind of a frame of reference and some context for these design principles and using the elements. But again, just to reiterate, your assignment does need to be submitted on time in order to get revisions, unless you have spoken with me, previously. The assessments usually, they're in the form of quizzes and some papers. There's, I believe, only one quiz in this particular class. They are also due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. And because they are essentially tests, I can't go over things step by step like I do in the assignments on Tuesday, the demonstrations, but we can show you, not only the coaches, but myself, we can show you the tools on how to use them. We can maybe even answer some questions. We just can't show you how to do the assignment. The tools that you need to use are demonstrated in not only the readings and the videos, but also, like I mentioned, the additional tips in my live sessions here. And yeah, the no resubmissions thing, apparently that decided it wanted to be on a little bullet of its own. Everything else came through with something else, but that wanted to be by itself. Late policy. I do try to be flexible because I know that life happens. I have obviously 3 kids. I am married to a wonderful man. But things do happen, and I understand that. So if something is preventing you from getting your work in on time, please let me know beforehand and we can make some arrangements. Especially if it is extenuating circumstances, but there are plenty of instances where we can work something out, but I need to know ahead of time, because after the deadline, if I get a message saying, I'm sorry, I didn't get this in, can I have another extension? Well, if the extension, I could give you an extension, but it's still going to be late. It's still going to have a late penalty. So I want to make sure that we are working together on this. And I do like to make sure that I let my students know that if I am nothing if not flexible. I do try to make sure that I work with my students, and just try to make sure, like right now, most of you probably have either a full-time or a part-time job in addition to your classes here at IU. But if this happened to be your full-time job, your boss would probably be not thrilled if you came in 3 days late or something. So at some point, I think most of you are looking to have this be your profession, your job. Excuse me. So let's kind of just try to keep that in mind. And I like to try to make sure that I am the boss that is trying to be flexible. So successful students in this class, I'm actually just going to check real quick right here. Just want to make sure I check on my time, as I like to, there it is. I like to make sure that I'm doing well on time. Successful students in this class, here are just some tips that I don't like to talk too much about them, but I like to go over them briefly. Make sure you watch the pre-recorded lectures first and take notes. That way you have a basis, you have an understanding of the information before you actually go ahead and do the assignments. That could actually answer questions that you end up with. Watch the live sessions here, either coming in like Beth and Dobby have today, or watching the recording, afterwards if you can't make it during the live sessions, and doing that before you start your work, because again, that could answer questions before you actually get going on your assignments. Check over the week's work before you get started. Kind of gives you an idea of how much time is going to be necessary, and then you can kind of prioritize various things, work around a work schedule, work around one of your other classes, work around your kids' activities for those of you that have children, or even your own activities. Excuse me, just to kind of get an idea of building a schedule. Check the announcements at least 5 times a week. I really need to change this, because I don't like to say at least 5 times a week. I do like to say, maybe every other day, especially if you feel like you're missing something. Go in and read the announcements, see if you were missing something. Just to try to make sure that you're updated. You can actually even make sure that you have your Canvas settings to send you those announcements in an email, so you don't even have to worry about logging in and logging into Canvas to check them. It will automatically come to your inbox. That's actually the way that I have it, so that I know when you all have submitted work and whatnot. And it's just a lot easier, so I know what's going on. Do the daily checkpoints. Like I mentioned, they're super fast and they build up real easy, so it can really help your score. Fully participate in the discussions. I have even in the last few mods learned some, I've learned additional information from participation in the discussions, and it's been really awesome. So the more that, like I said, more participation and the more substantive participation we get, the more meat that we get in those discussions, the better it is for everyone, including myself. Read the background information and the submission instructions and carefully for all those assignments and instructions. Every mod, I'm getting submissions. Oh, we have Beth mentions that she has her announcements sent to her. Yeah, it is definitely so super easy. And you like to engage with your peers and instructor. Well, good. That's good to know. Excuse me. So the background instructions and submissions, background information and submission instructions. Every mod I get assignments, although last mod wasn't actually bad. I get a lot of submissions that they're not reading all of the instructions carefully, so I get submissions that are the wrong file type or is missing information. maybe it's named incorrectly. So just make sure you go through those. There's a rubric at the bottom of every assignment and assessment page. So you can just go right through the rubric and make sure you have everything, and you should be good to go. Watch the demos and the examples in class. Pretty easy, self-explanatory. Submit their work on time, and I don't think I can emphasize this enough because I hate grading work lower simply because it wasn't submitted on time, especially when it is an individual that obviously put a lot of time and effort into it. You know, I hate not being able to give full scores simply because it wasn't submitted on time. Contact me. Number 10, contact me if you have questions or run into problems or delays. I'm here for you. Even if it is something that, you know, it's not even, especially if it's something that you think you can just shoot me a quick email or text and boom, you have the answer and you'll be good to go. Oh, goodness gracious. Sorry, my mouse got really excited there for a second. Utilize the multi-sessions, class, coach, and SSC for help and feedback. We are all here for you, working hard to help you guys out. Make sure that you succeed. Start your week's work early and pace yourselves. You know, it just like in the professional world, it can be very easy to get burned out. It can get very easy to get burned out here as well, you know, with that information. Maybe you don't want to watch all 4 hours of lecture all at the same time. I don't think I would. So try to break it up and pace yourself throughout the week. So any questions so far? Again, Beth and Dobby. Excuse me. All right, we got a no from Dobby and a no. We got some very polite no's. Thank you very much, you guys. All right, so on we go. Quick check. All right. Quick check. How many lectures do we need to watch per week? Do either or both of you remember how many lectures? Or how many lectures? You got 3, very good. 3, 1 pre-recorded and then 2 live ones. And how many hours do we have of those lectures? 4, perfect. Yep, 4 hours total. The pre-recorded is 2, and then the live sessions are 2. There we go. My dialogue boxes here for Zoom were getting in the way. Despite the fact that I know the information, I like to make sure I have it in front of me. Where do we find the lectures and the recordings? Do we remember that? What link or what shortcut would we find those lectures and recordings? I know that one's a little bit of a longer. That's not just a one number thing. Yep, so we actually have both answers here. We have under the videos and readings tab, the course media tab, and under the weeks of live sessions tab in Canvas. So you can find them in both of those. And then I won't make you guys type this one out. When are the live sessions? For those of you watching, Mondays at 12:30 p.m. and Tuesdays 12:30 p.m., both Mountain Time, except for tomorrow, the 19th. This will be at 6:30 p.m. When are the multi-sessions? Why is this so? That is like totally being broken. Ah! Sorry, didn't mean to freak everyone out. Crap, where did it go? I gotta find it. There we go. My toolbar is like right in front of this here. So when are the multi-sessions? Thursdays. Thank you very much, Dobby and Beth. Thursdays at 12:30 p.m. and that's until 2:30 p.m. I'm available specifically for IU for 2 hours. Now, just for, I do this for fun, and I started a little bit of an incentive last mod. Seemed to work well for the time being, so I'll probably continue to do it unless I'm told not to by the higher ups. Every session, I am going to have a secret question, And it is good for, you can choose either a 2-day extension on one of the assignments or 5 extra points on one assignment. So just shoot me a message and let me know the answer. That way I know you've watched it, because some people won't know actually, they won't be in here. So just shoot me a message and let me know what the answer is, and I will apply your choice to your assignment. So last week we had Valentine's Day. Today's secret question is, how many cards are given on Valentine's Day? And apparently I wanted to make that a statement while I was prepping this presentation, because there's no question mark. Well, the answer to that particular, oh, jeepers. Nope, that animation just decided it was going to. There we go. So how many cards are given on Valentine's Day each year? Usually about 1 billion Valentine's Day cards are exchanged each year, and that makes it the second largest seasonal card sending time of the year. I believe Christmas is the is the first. And if you wanted to confirm that or look at some other Valentine's Day facts, this is the website right there that I had gotten it from. So for a quick week 1 overview, we have the learning objectives. We are defining the 4 basic principles of design and illustrating their usage in a variety of design projects. We are going to be distinguishing between proper and improper usage of the basic design principles within a composition. So we're going to actually do a little bit of that. Identifying how the Gestalt principles impact visual perception and visual communication, and that's in the recording, the 2-hour recording. We're going to be applying a design style to a composition utilizing cultural influences of an era that is specifically geared towards the assignment, the flashcards assignment that I'll go over tomorrow. And then discussing the ways past eras influence contemporary design trends. So that actually is the discussion for this week. Oh, for goodness sakes, I forgot that I had animations on this. I have to stop doing that. Okay, so in the pre-recorded lecture, where we talk about what is graphic design and where did it come from, how does design work, and why does design work, your success as a designer will greatly depend on your understanding and application of these principles, not only today and this week, this mod, until you graduate, but also in your career. There's a reason why I have been in this field for almost 15 years now. There's a reason why your professor, your other instructors, and have been in the field for as long as they have, because they have learned these core principles of design and how to work with them. Excuse me. So the American Institute of Graphic Arts says it pretty succinctly, where it talks about how graphic design is a creative process that combines art and technology to communicate ideas. The designer works with a variety of communication tools in order to convey a message from a client to a particular audience. And the main tools are image and typography. So essentially, they are taking text and imagery and they are conveying a message. And yes, Beth, you are absolutely right. So you've either taken this before or you are just ahead of the game, because you are absolutely right. The principles of graphic design are contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. The acronym, which becomes CRAP, C-R-A-P. And the way that I like to look at it, which I will talk about tomorrow, is that if you don't follow the design principles, that's what you end up with. I like to, kind of make my lectures just a little bit interesting. So that people might think that analogy is kind of off color, but whatever. Until I have someone tell me not to say that, that's how I'm gonna explain it. And we actually have a few more minutes here. So let me see. Sometimes this happens where I'm just kind of talking and we actually end up with a little bit of time. So why not, instead of waiting until tomorrow, we will actually go over Oh, you know what? That's the wrong one. Oh, there we go. Week 1 discussion. Oh, but it actually did click the introduce one. There we go. So these are actually in the modules. We'll go down to the week 1 discussion. What goes around comes around. So the background here, we are examining the ways past design historic eras influence contemporary design trends. And oh, I lost my chat window here. I want to make sure that I still have it out. There we go. Ah. Okay, there we go. Excuse me. So we are going to be looking at the past and trying to figure out how designers and artists in the past kind of figured things out and solved their design problems, put things together, kind of communicated their own messages. And the prompt here is, in your discussion, imagine you've been hired by a band to produce a series of posters promoting their upcoming concert tour. The band's music and concert atmospheres are inspired by 1960s punk. And you can click on this link and kind of get an idea of 60s punk if you don't already have an idea. Okay. Yeah, so listing of some of the bands, and actually I was very surprised, even some of the younger students, to see how many knew some of these bands right offhand. I mean, the Beatles obviously are, you know, from that time period. Anyways, I don't know that I would call them punk technically, but you know, a lot of people seemed to kind of know the Kinks. Oh, so you know what? Actually, it does say Beatles. Oh, Helter Skelter. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. The Sonics was another one that I seemed very, I was impressed that there was a younger student in the last class that knew them. The Rolling Stones is pretty obvious, you know, but there are these other fairly lesser known ones. You could do a little bit of research into, you know, what their album covers looked like, what did, you know, their imagery, their photographs, what did they use? How did they dress? What was their style like? You might even consider maybe taking a listen to some of their work and trying to get an idea. So as you're doing this, consider these particular questions you're going to think about as you begin thinking about possible poster ideas for this particular band. Where might you look for inspiration, and why would you choose to look in those places? How might the past influence the present through text styles, color, layout, etc.? Why would it be important to put a fresh contemporary twist on the posters? And how would you explain your design choices and research thinking to your client? This is a very common thing that you have to do, especially if your client is either has something in mind, or I have very often had a client that has had something in mind, and then when he or she mentions it to me after the fact, we find out that what they were thinking was a completely different style. Maybe, you know, they had the wrong label for that particular style, or maybe the, you know, particular style that they're thinking of is from the same era, but it was maybe not necessarily indicative of the you know, common style. So having to explain your design choices and your research, where you came up with things and why you came up with them, that's a very common thing to have to do. And as long as you back up your research with it, you know, it's absolutely fine. So for your citation, you might use articles that show examples of how the past influences the present in graphic design. Maybe find articles from experts that suggest how to create a piece. So again, like I mentioned earlier, don't just say that we agree with the work, or good post, or I like what you say. Those are all wonderful things that you can absolutely support your classmates in. But I want to see if we can kind of really get a dialogue going back and forth. And we've got just, I think, yep, I'm the only one that's posted so far. So it is the first day. I'm not absolutely not surprised at that, and that's not a problem. So feel free to actually to include images if you want, other links of things. I do not believe I have. I'm actually going to try to make sure that I get it up today. There's another announcement that I usually post on how to embed an image into your discussion posts. It really can kind of draw people into your discussion post because they take a look at the image. That's what catches their eye. That's the whole point behind a lot of this design work. And that is, what might draw their attention to your particular discussion. So, it might actually create a back and forth that way. So that's actually the discussion for this week. That's the graded one, anyways. And then we have our introduce yourself discussion, talking a little about, as a way to introduce yourself, please answer the following questions. How do you communicate visually? What's your favorite color, or maybe your color scheme? You have a shape or a piece of imagery that you kind of relate to, or you maybe feel represents you well. Oh my goodness, mine did not come up. I'm going to have to change that. I'll have to do that right after my lecture here, because I have my business card that goes up there and it is not showing up. So I'll have to double check it. But so like I mentioned at the beginning of class in the introduce yourself section that I believe both of you actually kind of came in on, that gives me a little bit more of a context for where my students are coming from and what their background is, a little bit about their personality. So it kind of it gives me context so that I know who I'm grading, I know what I'm grading, because that sometimes can actually reflect a lot. When you know a little bit about the designer, that can speak a lot about the work. So we can end 3 minutes early, I think. Oh, can we include a 60s band that isn't on that list? Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, not a problem. Like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, yes, absolutely. Because we're not really, in the discussion, we're not really talking about the bands themselves. We're really talking about how we would go about trying to get information on, how do I want to word this? How we would go about the design process to reflect those designs. So if you want to do research into, like you were just mentioning, Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, the Who, if you want to take a look at, yes, absolutely. If you want to take a look at their covers, maybe the cover of Rolling Stones magazine, which does a lot of features. If you want to take a look at those kinds of things and use those as examples to as to how you would work with this band, this current punk band, absolutely feel free to include that stuff. That's all, that's all part of this kind of give and take of the discussions. So, all right. Well, Beth and Dobby, you guys have been awesome today. No, Kyle, no, not a problem, not a problem. I sometimes have a hard time. It's like I have fat fingers and I can't type correctly too. So do either one of you have any questions before the end of the session here? And you guys have been awesome. I don't very often get more than one person in my session. So it's so much easier to go back and forth. And we have no questions there. Well, all right. I will close out this session then and just remind everybody that tomorrow the session is at 6:30 p.m. and we'll go over the assignment. And a little bit about what graphic design is. It'll just be enhancing the pre-recorded lecture. So, well, I will see you, Dobby and Beth. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe I will just talk to you in the discussions. But I hope everyone enjoyed today's overview. And hope you folks all have a great day as well. Thank you, Dobby. Thank you, Beth.